Welcome to a new Harry's Garage video, and today's car is the Porsche 992 Carrera GTS. I've got to be careful what to call this because it comes in all sorts of flavours. The GTS, you can have Carrera 2, Carrera 4, you can have it in Targa, in coupe form obviously here. Now, I've got this car in quite quickly after that review I did on the 992 GT3. Because that was a bit of an eye-opener. If you've watched the video, I really think they've gone a bit too far with the track spec of it on it if you still want the roadability that previous GT3s could do. So maybe the GTS is the car I actually want now rather than the GT3. So that's what this test is going to be about. But I'm also going to look, I had that Carrera 2S in. Is this GTS, does that make that Carrera 2S redundant now in the range? I wonder. Let's have a closer look. Okay, first thing I'm going to discuss is the price. Now, Carrera S has gone up slightly since I last reviewed it. It's 94,000 on the road or thereabouts. This GTS before extras, 108,920. So let's call it 109,000 pounds. So you think, oh, it's quite an uplift, about 15,000 pounds. What you don't realise on initial looking at that price is quite a number of the things that were optional on a Carrera S are now standard on this. Things like the chrono pack, for example, the sports exhaust is standard on it. You get lowered suspension, 10mm lower suspension, sports wheel. Just the back of fag packet sort of add everything up. It's about £6,000 worth of extras. So it would be £100,000 if you wanted a Carrera S close to this, but there's some more extras to be had. So the gap in price is nearer £9,000. But this example you see here, well, this one cost £123,500. Now, the extras on this particular car is this one red paint, £2,000 for this red paint, which I cannot understand. Carmine red, 1,919, but slightly bizarre. It's got the trick lights on it, these LED lights that do all sorts of amazing things, automatic, so when a car comes towards you, it turns down in stages. Whether that's a bit annoying for the guy approaching you, I'm not sure, but they are quite an expensive, 1,365 option. What is standard on the GTS though are these wheels with centre lock. So these are the turbo wheels. We first saw these on the turbo, and they are standard equipment on GTS. Also, it gets the turbo brake system, so bigger calipers and bigger discs than a Carrera S. Come down the side, GTS badging on the side there. The brakes, I'm just going to mention this just to point this out. The front discs are fine, but on this example, you can see that this disc is actually fairly damaged, and there's a real grumbling when we hit the brakes in this car. I've had it for quite a long time. I've done a trip into North Wales with it, etc., and the grumbling hasn't gone away. And it's a bit of a giveaway when it's the rear disc worn like that, because that says the stability control has been working very hard at some point, and that's what wears the rear brakes, and the front discs look absolutely fine. Just around the back, the other thing you get is this word in here, so Carrera GTS. If this is Carrera 4, they would have shoved a 4 in there, but this is the two-wheel drive version. Oh, one other thing I want to show you on this car. This car has a sunroof, and it's a really clever system because it actually still retains this gutter here, which means you can put your, roof bars on, or box or skis or whatever you want to do, and then this roof will still operate even though you have a sort of roof bars on as well. I think it's a very clever system. I open it up in here so you can just see it, but it's, yeah, that's available on the GTS, something you would not get on your GT3. So yeah, all the practicalities. This also is a manual version of the GTS, so I'm going to take it outside, take it for a drive, and just explore how different this is to the GT3. The practicality of living with 992, it's really annoying Porsche, but they've had so much time to get it right, and there's just cubby holes, door pockets there. I've got sunglasses there, obviously I've got this. I thought that was a wireless pad, but it doesn't seem to. Yeah, cup holders. The roof is controlled here. This dinky little gear lever, 10mm lower apparently in the GTS versus a manual Carrera S, and the 7-speed manual gearbox, which has never been my favourite thing. but we'll come on to that later. And the usual things, glove box as well. I think there's cup holders. This has the GTS pack in it, which I don't quite understand. I've bought a GTS, why do I have to buy a GTS interior as well? But apparently it just adds this sort of carbon look here as well. Starting, I've got a key on me. It's not keyless go to get in, but once you're in, it's keyless go, and the seat motors forward as it does. Got seat belts as well. Yeah, these are the 18-way seats. They were an option as well, as everything. A little detail I absolutely love for this sports wheel is this spoke here is actually, I can see through it. So these controls volume on that side, this controls the computer on that side, but I can see through. I don't know, it's just really pleasing. Driver mode on here, it always starts off in normal. I've got on here what it adds, sport. Driver mode, chassis is normal still, but auto blip on downshifts on here, and sports exhaust. You just start off on normal. I'll take the stop start off on there. So yeah, a nice interior, it has to be said. I've got the roof open at the moment, so I'm going to sit on here, warm the engine up, and then we'll be on some better roads in a moment. And the turbo push as ever. Nice gearbox is the first thing that strikes you. Manual, I've never liked the 7-speed gearbox in the Porsche. Always a disappointment. The change quality, fine the 6-speed in GT3 and things, the 7-speed just wasn't a pleasant device. Don't know what Porsche have done. They've done something with the linkage, and in the GTS it's actually shorter, the gear stick as well, and now it's a nice change, really nice. And I think that, yeah, the round top is a good shape as well. But I've got the roof open, I hope you can still hear me, but just going through town. Not too much buffeting with it, just always a nice option to have, I always think, on a car like this. And it's, you know, from the outside it looks like it's a huge opening. It's not actually as big as you think. That's Taycan ahead. Which one we got? A 4S. Yeah, the thing about the Taycan, what you got to consider, I was going to mention this near the end, but that is a zero emission vehicle according to the EU. All manufacturers, including Porsche, have to meet this new average figure for CO2 for the fleet average, as it's termed, of cars they sell. And cars, 911s like this, GTS, produce quite a lot of CO2. I think this one's rated at 240 CO2. They've probably got to meet around an 80 average in 22 Porsche. So they need to sell, well, if they sell one of those for zero, and this is at 240, that averages at 120. There are odd rules in the EU where they can count electric cars as double, which just confuses things, but it does bring it down to 80 grams. So when you see a Porsche have sold a Taycan, it means it can sell a GTS. The weird world we're now in. I also think that's why GT3s are particularly limited, because the rating on that WLTP is pretty close to 300 grams when this is 240. So yeah, I mean a GT3 is well up there with the Hurricanes and, you know, Aston Martin, etc. But the low volume manufacturers don't have to meet such stringent targets as manufacturers over 100,000 who produce over 100,000, and Porsche, I think 300,000 vehicles, they have a much tougher target to hit than Aston Martin. Anyway, I digress. You always get comfortable in a Porsche, excellent seats, usable seats. There is this lightweight pack available on GTS that saves 25 kilos. The din weight of this is 1510 kilos, and a GT3 is 1418 kilos, so nearly as near as damn it 100 kilos lighter. So if you tick the lightweight box, well, you save 25 kilos, but you're still nowhere near down to the weight of a GT3. And the lightweight pack gives you carbon bucket seats that tilt and go forward manually, but they don't recline, they only do the tilting action. deletes the rear seats, and weirdly adds four-wheel steering. So you get the steering at the rear axle. And I say that's a weird thing to add on because that would actually add weight. So why in the lightweight pack do they feel to do that? I don't know. The other thing to realise with GTS, this is the chassis of the turbo. So not only you get the turbo wheels, the sort of setup is the same as Turbo S as well. And I like the Turbo S, so I'm really interested to see how it performs on that little B road I always use for these tests, and where the GT3 was just a disaster area. Right, time to push it up the hill. I'm going to change my driver mode. I'm going to put it into sport. You see on there what it's added. Chassis still normal, sports exhaust. I'm going to go down. I'll try second. There's the auto blip just coming out of there. And I'll try and go past this at 30 miles an hour. And here we go. Proper push. And into the limiter. Yeah, really impressive performance now available. 480 horsepower this car, so a lift of 30 over the regular Carrera S. Torque is already high, it's 570, but it's already higher than the Carrera S. It's the torque that hits you from, it's maximum torque at 2,500 RPM, and that's the turbo advantage of them Porsche moving to turbo engine cars for their 911 regular range. Long geared though, I'm into 6. I mean, 7th. It's only a motorway gear. What are we doing? We're doing. See, I've got no real performance. I'm at 60 miles an hour. I've got 1,500 revs up, and I'm flat out. No acceleration whatsoever available in 7th below 60 miles an hour. But it goes straight down to 6. Just treat it as a 6-speed with an overdrive for when you're going on the long cruises. And I should say, I went up to North Wales in this car, and on the motorway stretch up the M5 and then bit of M6 and then M54 off to North Wales, I was over 30 mpg, which is mighty impressive for this sort of performance. I mean, overall I did about nearly 400 miles, but it was still 27 or 28 mpg, which is good. Right, and here it changed down there. That's not me blipping, I've sort of restraining myself from doing it. Around there, got it. It's got some punch, this car now. Any more performance than this? It's probably 8 seconds to 100 miles an hour, this car, and that turbocharged engine just means you're always in that power zone, apart from when you're in 7th, 60 miles an hour. Right, here is where the GT3 was all over the shop. It just couldn't cope with the undulations, particularly on the inner wheel. Light bit of camber deflection, but nothing like the GT3. I went to do that T33 with Gordon Murray, and not on camera, but he mentioned that he'd had the GT3 in when at Millbrook, and his words were, how on earth do they sell it as a road car? And I said, well, that was my experience as well. So he was really surprised. I mean, it was impossibly direct, the steering, and he was at Millbrook, it was reasonably smooth roads rather than on this B road. I mean, I could go to Sports Plus. That then changes the chassis to Sport. It's livable, this car, even in Sport. Right, here's my compression here. Let's see the suspension coats with this. Nicely done. Didn't run out of suspension on there. Sharp turn in. I mean, a good sound as well, wasn't there? There's a car coming, so I'm not going to go through it too quick. Even with the electronic rack, it loads up naturally around there. It's just a good thing, and a really good thing after that GT3 much as I like that engine. Yeah, time to go through some of the conclusions on this car, likes and dislikes. First dislike, much as I celebrate this turbo engine, there was a time when Porsche on the GTS model gave us the race engine. 997 GTS was the last time you had the GT3 engine in the back, and there is something very, very special with the normally aspirated 9,000 RPM GT3 engine in the 992. Okay, this is a really good unit as well, but oh, I so wish it was available with the high revving normally aspirated engine. Another slight dislike, well, visually it doesn't look that special over the Carrera 2. And I hesitate putting that into a dislike, because having lived with the GT3, which I thought was over the top, maybe that's a good thing, that it's a sporting model in slight disguise in GTS form. So some people that would be a like, and to others a dislike. The likes are much easier. Livability, number one like. This is not a GT3 I found unlivable with. This is very, very livable with. It does everything I want a 911 with, and I've got a GTS badge staring me out the dash, and that sort of excites me because I've got a special model, even though it's a regular production run, but it does mean it's available as well. Love that auto blip. It's annoying because I like heel and towing, but it's so good. I punch out there. Instantaneous, that punch that with this turbocharged engine, but round here I can put the power down. The advantage of the rear engine is that traction at the rear, and it has a lot of that, this car. Another surprising like with this car, the gearbox. It's terrific, and I would, much as I like PDK, this is a bit of a character add, having this gearbox. In fact, if I come round to the conclusions, why I used to buy a 911 is because there was a quirkiness to it. Not only was it a great driver's car, you knew the engineers were absolutely obsessed with the build quality, the handling, and how they could make this rear engine, turn that rear engine to their advantage. And they had different ways of doing it, the air coolness, the size, the performance, all sorts of things that made them hugely appealing. What I find with 992 is they've made it an incredibly accomplished car, but it's lost that quirkiness of 911 somewhere along the line. And the weirdness is that manual gearbox adds back the quirkiness of a 911. And it's great. You know, if you can have it as a toy, there is no downside of this gearbox. It's all positive. So I really like that. The other point with this GTS is, to me, it makes the regular Carrera S completely redundant in the range. I cannot think of one reason to pick Carrera S over GTS if you were lucky enough to be choosing a new 911 today. It adds all the bits that most people tick, sports exhaust, chrono pack, etc., and has the added kudos of a better badge, and that's going to be reflected in its depreciation. I'm sure this is going to be a much more wanted car than a Carrera S in the future. So it's a win-win. The only thing I slightly criticise on this, even though it's got the turbo brakes, you can hear on here this car really rumbles with the brakes. I'm just going to brake down here a bit harder. There you go. Those are those worn rear discs. So I would tick that option, about 6,500 to have carbon brakes. I am a huge fan of carbon brakes. I've got them on the Project 7 and 8, and if you're doing any track work, then I just love the consistency of the pedal and the fact that will never happen. You'll never have those grumbly brakes because they've overheated on a track day or whatever. So there you go, that's my conclusion on the Porsche GTS, an utterly fabulous 992, almost a pick of the range, I think. Turbo S was my favourite, but it's a lot more money. So maybe this is the pick of the range. It's just a very livable, lovely, drivable 911, and especially in two-wheel drive form like this one, and manual. So there you go, hope you enjoyed this video. If you have, well, keep watching, keep subscribing, more videos coming on very soon. Thanks for watching.